Hi, in this video we will be looking at how to do this cool looking Photoshop effect or the photo manipulation. So let's start. I'll start off by selecting this image as a subject and I'll be inserting over here. So first I'll have to select this image over here. So I'll start off by duplicating the layer and then select the subject over here. So you can choose multiple options. As I always say, you can choose any option which you're comfortable with. Since we got some sharp edges over here and the background is not so busy or clean, I'll just choose a simple tool over here. I'll just choose a quick selection mode and I'll just choose the turtle over here. If you want to zoom in, you can just hold Alt and using your scroll button on your mouse to zoom in and zoom out, so we can make a proper selection of the subject. And you can always deselect by holding Alt on your keyboard again, Alt or Option, and just selecting again on the corners where you want the areas which needs to be unselected or deselected from the main subject. You can also increase or decrease the brush size by pressing the bracket keys on your keyboard, which will basically increase or reduce your size of the brush. We don't have to have a super sharp cutout of this image, since we'll be merging with some of the background which is available from this image itself, and the turtle or the subject will go somewhere here. Let me show you where. It will be somewhere over here. So the most of the upper part will be hidden from the main composition, so you don't have to be worrying about making a precise selection on the other parts. Well, while you are holding the space, you can pan around and release the space to come back to the selection tool. I just wanted to show the technique or the method I follow, because what's happening is sometimes when I'm putting on the text effects, you're not able to get the exact, or something you're getting mixed up. So that's the reason I'm trying to do a voiceover here, but still there is some busy noise. I'll just try to keep it as distortion free or as easy as possible. If you got any questions, you can always ask me on the comments. I'll be happy to answer and clarify any of the doubts you got. So I think this is a decent selection over here. If you want more precise, you can just zoom in and reduce the size of your brush, and you can just hold Alt to remove and release whenever you're holding the Alt, you can see the brush changing it from plus to minus. When I release it is plus, or you can choose from here. You can choose minus to do this one and plus for selection, for adding the selection to the extra selections. Since I'm just removing over here, I'll choose the minus, or I hold plus and hold the Alt, and I'll just remove some of the water or the water selections over here. You can also add if you want to have more precise selection, because we won't be using so much of the selection here, some of the areas will be merged or not be visible in the main composition. For that's the reason I'm not going so sharp on the selecting the images. You can always try the way you want it, or if you got some lot of time, you can always go as much as precise you want it. I think this will do for me for this composition and the tutorial. Let me check again. Yeah, if you want, you can select these parts also. Again, depends on your how good or how sharp you wanted the image to look, or depending on your interest of this one. Here are some more parts. Okay, once I select the options, I just came back of the selection by pressing Ctrl+0 on the keyboard. This will basically wherever you have zoomed in, just hitting the Ctrl+0 will bring back to the main or the full screen. Next, since the image is already selected and my selection is selected here, next I'll choose the click on the layer and press Ctrl+J to duplicate the subject from the background, or you can also press so now I'm going to press Ctrl+J to duplicate the layer where only the selection will be placed into different selection. In case if I remove this, you can see the subject is completely on its own layer now. So then you can move this subject to your main composition. Here you can do this by multiple ways. You can click this tool to select the choose move tool, or you can click and drag to the main selection, or you can just hold control on your, if you're on some other tool, for example if you're on a brush tool selected, then you can just hold control and you can just click and drag to the main selection. Here we have. So I'll just make sure I have a duplicate copy of the main scene or the subject, whatever we call it. I'll just duplicate by clicking and dragging to the plus, or you can also press the Ctrl+J to get the duplication of the copy. So since we got the duplicated, now I'll select the main subject and first I'll change this to smart object. What is smart object? Again, it's basically it will all keep the pixels whatever the original size it is. So whenever you are zooming in, zooming out, or you are stretching the image, the pixel stays calm. It doesn't make the pixels to go away. What happens basically is if you're not using the smart object, whenever you decrease the size to any small size, the Photoshop eliminates or removes extra pixels which is not visible to the main canvas or the main screen. So basically it does because to reduce the size of the image, since we may have to increase or decrease. So for that reason I'll just convert it to smart object. And also if you are using or applying any filters, to the smart object, you can always go back and change or modify the filters in any ways you wanted. If the image is not into some smart object, we cannot modify anything whatever it is. It stays, or it flattens the image, since it's not a smart object. So it's always, I consider always to create or make the main or the objects to change it to smart object will be really helpful in modifying, in case if you wanted to do it any changes in the when you change your mind. If you want to do some changes to the image again, you can easily go back and do, since we are converted to smart object. And now I'll just resize my image to make it more match to the background or the way you want it to it appear. I pressed Ctrl+T to activate the transformation tool, where you can resize, rotate, or do any changes to that. And once you're done with the selection or the requirement, you can just press the enter button or over here to confirm the selection or the changes you made using the transformation tool. I'll just increase my size now, slightly rotate it. we try to match the perspective of the image. Since we already got some shadows over here in the main image, we can just try to utilize available shadows and lighting effect. Since we already got the shadows over here, we can just try to match the shadows. Just increase little bit more, just move it little bit up, something over here. It basically depends on your style, like if you want to more to appear in the scene or less. I'll choose somewhere over here and I'll just hit enter, or you can press click confirm to click over there to confirm the the moved selection. So since we have moved it over here, you can see it doesn't matches exactly to the background, or the blending doesn't work so good, and it doesn't look like it's in the scene actually. So to this I'll be need to do some changes, like apply some blur effects to the main, to the subject or the title here, to look it more, like to make it look more natural and one with the scene. Now we can see that the turtle is too sharp to the background here, so just slightly apply some blur to the subject here, so it basically matches to these buildings or the scenery over here. So to do this, you can go to the filters, blur and Gaussian blur. Since we have it in a smart object over, we can also modify it in future. So I'll just choose around maybe 1 pixel, 1.5 pixel to slightly make it blurry, but not so much like it does. It looks completely different or they isolated from the background. Maybe around 1.5 or 1.7, and also it depends if you're doing with your any other image, it may be a little different depending on your image, on the sharpness. I'll choose maybe 1.8 here. So the next is like I need to match it with the background. Like you can see the colors and contrast is too high when compared to the background scene here. For this to it's best we can do is use some levels and adjustment layers to reduce contrast and some blacks and whites over here. But I think the best option for this will be, this is just a trick. Like what you can do is you can just choose a black and white layer. When this layer is applied, we can see basically like what are the sharps and which areas is too bright and too less. Like you can see the title is completely too bright and the whites are too high when compared to the background here. So what you can use, you can just use this layer as a reference layer, and using this as a reference layer, I'll be choosing a levels over here. So it's kind of a little difficult to do and also to talk. So you can see here the highlights are too sharp, and it's too bright over here, and some of the whites in the background, you can see it's not so bright, it's kind of less than white or kind of grayish. So I'll just try to match the turtle to the background here. Choosing this, you can just move left and right. Since when you're changing, the complete scene is getting affected, I'll click here to restrict to only the below layer, and now I'll be changing it a little bit. Since it's getting, you can just reduce it a little bit, something to match with the scene, like wherever you can see these areas and these areas, these whites are somewhat not so white, like they are kind of grayish, but on the subject the whites are very high. So we'll need to try to match this to the background to get it a proper and better result. You can always come back and change after when you're if you change your mind, you want to apply some extra white and blacks in the later of the composition. You can always come back and change the effects over here. I'll just choose something which is neutral, which matches a little bit better. It's kind of tricky, you won't get it in a first shot. You may need to go back and forth and check exactly which works out, because if it doesn't matches to the scene, it looks completely different, and the complete composition doesn't looks good. I think somewhere here will look good. there are uh, there are other tricks where you can basically choose blacks and whites and isolate and those layers, and do exactly like you can match perfectly to the background. But to keep this little bit the simple, I'm just trying to you just use only levels adjustments layer here. I choose around maybe this place and slightly adjust the middle one. They get some more gray. This is before and after. You can see we have reduced the white slightly to match it. Okay, let me check now how does it look by removing them. In you can just click on this to reveal or hide or show or hide the effect or the layer. I just untick this now. You can see it's kind of a little bit matching now, but still the contrast is too high on the subject over here. So what we can do is we can apply other filter here. We can choose a hue saturation. I'm not explaining what exactly that the hue and saturation does, because it will take very long video and will basically it will start getting boring. So I'll just keep it to the simple. That's for this subject, I mean for this composition. In future videos, whenever I'll try to explain based on only the subject I'm working on. If you guys want to get the complete like how does the hue and saturation or any of the filters work, let me know. I'll try to do it as much as soon as possible basically. So for the coming back to the image, you can see the saturation is too high and the saturation of the background image is not so bright, or it's too low. After you have created the saturation layer here, you can just restrict to the only the below layers, not the complete composition. And you can basically reduce the saturation from here. You can increase or reduce, make it somewhere which matches to the background. Maybe somewhere here. You can always come back and change in the later if you want it more contrasty, or once you are done with the other blending options, you can come back to the hue and saturation and do some changes if you require it. I'll just reduce it somewhere here. Okay, somewhat it matches. If you reduce it too low, it doesn't look so natural. Maybe around here. Okay, I'll choose maybe a -30. Maybe depend if you're doing any manipulation on a different image, it may be a little bit varied or it'll be a little different from my numbers to your numbers. I'll just go with a -30. Since you can always come back and change, I'll just leave it here. You can press Ctrl+0 again to zoom out or fill the screen. So next I'll try to add some shadows to the subject, where we can see like for example, if the light is reflecting from the top and there's a shadow cast over here, but still some parts of the turtle can be We can add some shadows to make it look better. So for this I'll just choose this button to select a new layer and choose a darker color. You can choose a black and do this, but I'll be picking a color from the shadows over here, or the main shadows from the main subject itself, because if you select over here, you can hold Alt to bring the eyedropper tool and just click to select. If you open up the palette over, you can see it's not completely dark, it's somewhere between blue and black, so it will basically give you the more natural shadow to the image. So once you have chosen the color, what you can next do is finally brush over it. You can brush over the parts of the image. You can choose the brush from right clicking. I'll choose a soft round brush here, and reduce the opacity to maybe around 10%. Then I'll be slightly painting on it. You can also restrict this, moving this layer to the down, which above the subject layer here, and apply the shadows over here. You can zoom in or zoom out to see properly like where you wanted to apply. I'll choose only the dark areas, some places. We can see the difference between before and after. Now it looks kind of a little bit more belonging to the scene, instead of completely different object in the scene. If you think it's too dark, then always go over here and opacity reduce it to maybe somewhere around 50 or 40% or 60%, depending on your image. For this I'll choose maybe 55 will do, but 60. If you're going above 60, it doesn't look so natural. It looks kind of muddy or kind of not so sharp. So I'll keep it around 60%. So next we have to blend in more to make it a flat image, or the complete scene looks as a single image. For this, the very simple trick is, what I do is I just create a new layer and copy some colors from the background over here, and just paint it over on the subject, so it looks like the subject is basically in the same location, because the colors which we are painting over is from the background colors. So it basically looks more natural and neutral, because if we use some other colors, it may not look so good, or it may look completely different from the foreground and the background, since I'm copying the colors from the background images over here, from few colors from here and darks and lights from here, so it will look more naturally blended over here. So what I do is, after selecting the brush tool, you can press B to select the brush. Also, I'll reduce the opacity to around 10% here. I'll just paint over. I'll just, for on the left hand side over here, I'll just pick a color from the sky here. You can just press and hold the alt button, and click whichever the color you want. When you're holding your mouse button, you can basically choose like which color has been picked up. So I'll choose around which is nearing to the wing over here. I'll choose this color and just increase my brush size by pressing my bracket crease. I'll just slightly paint over it. And also I don't want to restrict this only to on this one, because it's a complete image. This will help blend in properly. So just paint over here, few clicks, and for this side I'll just pick a color from here, highlights from the cloud and just paint over here. And the below again I'm just holding the alt key and clicking to pick the color from the background. If you can always, if you paint something bad and if you want to go back for a step further, you can press Ctrl+Z to just get back or get back to the previous state, or also called as undo button. And basically we use it in most of the applications like that. So I'll just go ahead and blend it more by choosing the colors available here. Just make sure it doesn't make it too much, like it will basically doesn't look so good or natural when you do it, overdo it. If at all you overdo it, you can always reduce the opacity from here. Now you can see it mostly blended over. So next what I do is I'll just so now we are almost done with the image. It looks basically naturally blended to the image. You can go further and add some more colors. If you think it's too sharp or too much, you can just always go here, reduce the opacity of the layer to slightly lighten or brighten the image. I'll just keep it around 80%, looks good, or you can also go with the 90%. If for this image this works perfectly. If you're doing any other image apart from this one, the colors may be different. In those cases you may have to change or do some extra modification for this one. So next I'll this looks good, but still what I do is I'll add some more colors for for you can see some yellows in the background, and since there are some oranges, dark kind of little bit of red, and the image on the main subject has some blues in it, so we can use a curves layer to basically remove or add some colors to this one. I'll just choose my curves for this, and I'll just restrict this to the only to the image. You can do this by clicking here. So now that we have choose the curves adjustment here, what we can do is we have to work it on the colors like CMY or the RGB colors, where you basically select the opposite color of the color. For example, for cyan you choose red, or red for cyan, magenta and yellow. And this is a bit complicated curves adjustment. It's a big process where we need to understand. For this tutorial I'll just keep it simple. So since you can see, so there are few yellows over here, I'll be choosing blues here, blue, and choose blue. And if I go up, it will add some blues. If I go opposite, I will be adding some yellows to this one. So in this case I'll just add a bit of yellow to the image here. So basically it matches the below the background here, like few yellows over here. Just kindly lightly add it. It's kind of sensitive, we may overdo sometimes. We need to be a little careful over here. I'll just do somewhere a little bit of yellow here. You can see the difference here. It's very little, but not so much. Next I'll also add little bit of I'll add some little bit of red to the image. I'll choose red here and slowly increase little bit of reds. So basically it reflects the color from here to the above, something which matches to the scene. And we need to remove some blues from here. Blues we already have reduced over here, so I'll choose green and increase a little bit to remove the greens and basically merge these colors into the foreground and background. A little bit of colors will do, don't go too sharp. Something over here, I think, yes. This will do. And also now since we apply this one, I think it's a little bit sharp or have some extra colors over here. You can always go and reduce the opacity of this one, maybe a little bit, or maybe I'll choose 75% of this one. So here we have almost done with the image, and this is what the final result looks like. In case if you want to further merge, what you can do is you can apply a simple any LUTs or the color lookup, whichever maybe something like moonlight will you can choose soft warming. It basically completely blend in, or it will completely apply a layer on top of that which looks completely different to make it as a single image. It doesn't look, it looks with a little bit of natural. And again we can always increase or decrease the opacity over here, or what you can do is you can change this to around maybe 80% to apply it slightly, and remove this effect from the turtle itself by using any soft brush. I'll choose, we have already selected a soft brush here, and I'll choose, since we have a mask is white and everything has been revealed or everything is showing up, I'll just choose opposite color. You can click here to choose black, or also you can press X on the keyboard to choose the opposite color, that is black. Basically what happens now, since we have choose black here, we will be hiding some of the filter from this one, from these areas wherever we will not want it to display or something. I'll choose maybe 50% and increase the brush by, we can increase the brush size by pressing left and right brackets, or also there's other option where you can increase this alt and right click the mouse, and you can increase up and down to increase the size and the hardness when you're going vertical, like when you go up and down or vertical way, it will increase or decrease the hardness. Or if you're going for horizontal way, left and right, it will increase or lower the size of the brush. So I'll choose somewhere between soft brush, completely soft, maybe hardness 0 and opacity to 50%. Opacity you can set it over here. Now I'll just brush over here to remove the effect from the buildings over here, so the only effect applies on the top. Shows this image is basically because the shadows goes well, and the image also is well blended, easily blended, and the perspective, basically you need to match with the perspective first. If the perspective doesn't match, it's very hard, and we cannot get the final result. I think this will do for the image. I'll just stop here. If you want, we can still increase some colors and grades. This looks good for me. I'll just stop it here. I hope this video was very helpful to you guys. If you have any comments or any suggestions for me, let me know in the comments, and do subscribe for any future videos whichever I'll be uploading. I'll try to make it as much as possible to do a voiceover. Sometimes due to a noisy background or issues, I may not able to do voiceover, but still I keep in mind to explain as much as possible using text. But I will always try to do a voiceover going forward. So thanks for your time, and I'll see you in the next video.